August 7th, 1942, 6:14 hours. Off Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands. The first shells land before the sun clears the horizon. Water erupts in white pillars around the gray hulls of American transports. Marines crouch behind stacked crates on open decks. Fingers dug into rifle stocks slick with sweat and salt spray. A bosun's whistle cuts through the thunder of naval gunfire. Somewhere beyond the smoke screen, a Japanese coastal battery has found its range. The sea smells of cordite and diesel. On the bridge of the heavy cruiser USS San Francisco, binoculars lock onto the jungle shoreline. Muzzle flashes blink between palm trunks. The gunnery officer calls corrections in clipped bursts. Left 5 degrees. Elevation up 200. 6-inch rifles answer with concussive recoil. Brass casings clanging across steel decks. Below, in the troop transports, young Marines of the 1st Marine Division wait for the word to hit the beach. They were told resistance would be light. They were told the enemy was reeling. But the shoreline ahead spits flame. 3,000 miles away, in Pearl Harbor, Admiral Nimitz has gambled what remains of American naval strength on this landing. Aircraft carriers Enterprise, Saratoga, and Wasp patrol beyond the horizon. They are thin shields in an ocean still dominated by the Imperial Japanese Navy. In Tokyo, naval planners once called the U.S. Pacific Fleet a paper tiger. After December 7th, they believed it broken. Battleships lie rusting in the mud of Oahu. Carriers are few. Pilots are green. The rising sun still casts a long shadow across the Pacific. But this morning, the tiger breathes. Ashore, Japanese construction crews scatter from the half-finished airstrip at Lunga Point. They were carving an airfield to seal the southern perimeter of the empire. Instead, American dive bombers now scream overhead, SBD Dauntless peeling into near-vertical drops. Bombs tumble. Earthen core explodes skyward. Rear Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner watches through haze and shockwave. Amphibious tractors churn toward the beach. Higgins boats slam down their ramps. Marines plunge into waist-deep surf. Rifles raise above their heads. Faces set in hard lines that will not break. The airfield will be called Henderson Field by nightfall. In the wardroom of a flagship hundreds of miles away, a message crackles over encrypted radio circuits. Vice Admiral William Bull Halsey is not yet in direct command here, but his presence hangs over every decision. He is recovering from illness in the States, sidelined by dermatitis and exhaustion, yet his reputation travels faster than any dispatch. Aggressive, relentless, unpredictable, Japanese commanders in Rabaul read their own signals traffic with cool confidence. American carriers cannot sustain prolonged action. Their logistics are fragile. Their morale must still be fractured after the disaster at Pearl Harbor. Reinforcements will steam down the slot from Bougainville and Truk. Night fighting favors the Imperial Navy. Long lance torpedoes will finish what bombs began. They believe time is on their side. As dusk settles over Guadalcanal, fires burn along the treeline. The Marines dig shallow foxholes into coral that resist every entrenching tool. Mosquitoes rise in black clouds. The jungle hums with unseen movement. Out at sea, silhouettes form against the darkening sky. Japanese cruisers and destroyers advance under cover of night, engines throttled low. Crews drilled perfection in nocturnal combat. They intend to smash the invasion force before it can root itself ashore. American radar is primitive, unreliable. Training is uneven. Coordination is fragile. On the bridge of a U.S. destroyer, a young lieutenant stares into darkness broken only by faint phosphorescence along the bow. He hears it first, the distant growl of turbines. Then the sky tears open. Star shells bloom overhead, washing the sea in ghastly white light. Heavy cruiser guns roar at point-blank range. Japanese shells rip through American hulls with surgical violence. Metal screams. Fuel ignites. Men vanish in blasts that leave only smoke and debris. This is not a skirmish. This is the opening act of a grinding war of attrition. By dawn, several Allied cruisers are sinking or aflame. The waters off Savo Island are choked with oil and bodies. It is one of the worst defeats in U.S. naval history. And yet, on the beaches, the Marines still hold the airstrip. The Empire expected collapse. Instead, it has triggered something harder. Somewhere in Washington, orders are shifting. The Navy will not withdraw. The Solomons will not be surrendered. The fight will not be brief. And soon, the bull will be unleashed. October 18, 1942, 9:32 hours. Noumea Harbor, New Caledonia. A launch cuts across the harbor chop, its wake flashing white beneath a hard Pacific sun. On the quarterdeck of USS Argonne, sailors snap to attention as Vice Admiral William F. Halsey steps aboard, khaki uniform pressed, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the anchorage like a predator assessing ground. He wastes no time with ceremony. South Pacific Area and South Pacific Force are now his responsibility. The Solomon Islands campaign is bleeding ships, planes, and men at a rate Washington can scarcely afford. Reports from Guadalcanal read like casualty ledgers. Malaria cases climb. Ammunition stocks dwindle. Japanese naval bombardments turn Henderson Field into a cratered wasteland by night. Halsey reads every dispatch. He knows the stakes. If Henderson Field falls, Japanese bombers will dominate the sea lanes between America and Australia. Supply convoys will become floating coffins. The Pacific War could tilt irreversibly. On the operations table, greased pencils trace the slot, that narrow corridor down which Japanese destroyers race under darkness, delivering troops and shells in what American sailors call the Tokyo Express. The enemy excels at night fighting. Their Type 93 long Lance torpedoes outrange anything in the U.S. arsenal. American crews still struggle with radar discipline, target identification, coordinated maneuvers. Halsey does not flinch at the imbalance. He issues a signal that will echo through every wardroom in the theater. Attack. Repeat. Attack. There will be no cautious husbanding of carriers. No passive defense of supply lines. Every available asset will be thrown into the struggle for Guadalcanal. Risk is not avoided. It is embraced. Aboard USS Enterprise, scarred from previous battles, flight deck crews patch bomb craters with frantic efficiency. The carrier's air group is under strength, pilots exhausted, maintenance crews stretched thin. Yet, when orders arrive prepare for immediate operations, no one hesitates. You can feel the shift. At Rabaul, Japanese Vice Admiral Genichi Mikawa reviews reconnaissance photos of Henderson Field. The airstrip still functions. American Wildcats and Dauntless rise daily to contest the skies. Convoys attempting to reinforce Guadalcanal suffer under relentless daylight attack. The enemy, supposedly crippled, fights with stubborn ferocity. Tokyo still believes decisive battle will break them. Halsey believes the opposite. Late October brings converging fleets. Intelligence suggests a major Japanese push is forming. Carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku maneuver east of the Solomons, screened by cruisers and destroyers. Their air groups are veteran, hardened by Coral Sea and Midway. They expect to sweep aside what remains of American naval aviation. On October 26th, at the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands, the Pacific sky fills with aircraft. American radar picks up incoming raids, blips crawling across green scopes, bogies bearing 090. Fighters scramble from Enterprise and Hornet. Engines roar down wooden decks, wheels lifting into blinding sunlight. In the air, formations dissolve into chaos. Zero fighters slash through American bombers. Wildcats twist and roll. .50 caliber tracers stitching the sky. Dive bombers press through flak bursts that blossom like black flowers. Pilots glimpse carrier decks below for seconds that stretch into lifetimes. Hornet takes the brunt. Bombs punch through her flight deck. Torpedoes slam into her hull. Fires rage uncontrolled. Damage control parties fight through smoke thick as tar. Hoses whipping across buckled steel. Yet even as she burns, her aircraft continue their runs against Japanese carriers. Shokaku is hit. Her flight deck is shattered, hangars ablaze. She withdraws, crippled. Zuikaku survives, but loses irreplaceable veteran aircrew. When the smoke clears, Hornet is abandoned and later sunk. Enterprise limps away, scarred but afloat. Tactically, the battle favored Japan. Strategically, something vital has shifted. Their carrier air groups are bleeding experienced pilots faster than they can be replaced. Training pipelines at home cannot match the pace of loss. The Empire's edge dulls by degrees. Halsey studies the aftermath with hard calculation. He has lost a carrier. He has lost men. But the Japanese have lost something more precious: time and expertise. Back at Guadalcanal, Henderson Field still operates. Night after night, Japanese battleships attempt to pulverize it into submission. On October 13th, Kongo and Haruna unleash 14-inch shells that turn the airfield into an inferno. Aviation fuel explodes in rolling fireballs. Planes are shredded where they sit. By dawn, Seabees and Marines are already repairing the runway. It becomes a ritual of endurance. Bombardment, repair, sortie, repeat. Halsey feeds reinforcements into the grinder. Fresh destroyers, replacement aircraft, convoys escorted through submarine-infested waters. He understands that this campaign will not be won in a single dramatic clash. It will be decided by attrition, by who can endure longer. The Japanese High Command still speaks of annihilating the American presence with one final blow. Halsey has no intention of offering them that satisfaction. He will bleed them instead. And in the dark waters off Guadalcanal, the decisive confrontation is already forming. November 12, 1942, 1:24 hours. Iron Bottom Sound off Guadalcanal. Rain lashes the decks. Visibility collapses to a few thousand yards. Radar scopes flicker with uncertain returns as Task Group 67.4 gropes through darkness in a ragged column. Ahead, shapes materialize on the screen. Large, closing fast. Rear Admiral Daniel J. Callahan grips the rail of USS San Francisco. Open fire. Searchlight snap on. The night explodes. At point-blank range, American cruisers and destroyers trade broadsides with a Japanese bombardment force centered on the battleships Hai and Kirishima. Muzzle flashes strobe across the black water. 5-inch and 8-inch shells slam into superstructures. Long lance torpedoes streak, invisible beneath the waves. You're inside a steel corridor when the first hit lands. The deck jumps under your boots. Overhead lights shatter. Fragments scythe through bulkheads. Damaged control parties stumble forward, dragging hoses into compartments already filling with smoke and steam. The formation disintegrates within minutes. USS Atlanta is torn apart by gunfire. Admiral Norman Scott mortally wounded on her bridge. Destroyers Cushing and Laffey close to suicidal range, firing until their guns fall silent, then vanish in flame. Japanese shells rake San Francisco, killing Callahan and most of the staff where they stand. It is not a battle. It is a barroom brawl between capital ships. Hai absorbs dozens of hits. Her steering is crippled. Fires rage across her decks. American destroyers, mortally damaged, ram torpedoes into her flanks at near point-blank range. By dawn, she circles helplessly under the gaze of American aircraft rising from Henderson Field. Dauntless dive bombers descend through cloud gaps. Bombs punch into already shattered decks. Torpedo planes press attacks at masthead height. Hai, pride of the Imperial Navy, settles slowly into the sea, but the cost is staggering. American cruisers lie burning. Destroyers sink bow first into black water thick with oil and debris. Survivors cling to rafts, listening to distant gunfire echo off jungle-covered hills. Iron Bottom Sound earns its name in a single night. Yet the Japanese mission has failed. Henderson Field still stands. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto refuses to concede. A second bombardment force approaches, determined to finish the job. Kirishima returns, escorted by cruisers and destroyers. Their orders are clear. Annihilate the airfield. Clear the skies for troop transports. Halsey responds with what he has left. Battleship USS Washington newly arrived, and USS South Dakota move south under Rear Admiral Willis A. Lee. These are fast battleships, armed with 9 16-inch rifles each, guided by advanced radar fire control systems. It will be the first time such ships clash in the Pacific. November 14th, 23:17 hours. Contact. South Dakota becomes illuminated by searchlights, Japanese shells hammering her hull. Electrical failures cascade through her systems. She is silhouetted against gun flashes, absorbing punishment that would cripple lesser ships. In the darkness beyond, Washington remains undetected. Lee watches his radar plot with clinical focus. Range closing. Bearing steady. Commence firing. 16-inch guns erupt. The night shudders under concussive blasts that roll across Iron Bottom sound like thunder from another world. Radar-directed salvos straddle Kirishima. Massive shells punch through armor, detonating inside engine rooms and magazines. Secondary explosions ripple across her decks. Kirishima fires back blindly, her searchlights probing smoke and rain. Another American salvo lands. And another. Within minutes, her steering fails. Fires rage uncontrollably. Crewmen scramble to abandon ship as the once formidable battleship lifts heavily to starboard. Shortly after 3 o'clock, she capsizes and disappears beneath the surface. The Japanese troop transports, now exposed to daylight air attack, are massacred by aircraft from Henderson Field. Bombs tear through hulls loaded with soldiers and supplies. Those that reach shore disgorge troops without heavy equipment. Stranded in a hostile jungle, the decisive blow the Empire sought has turned inward. In Tokyo, staff officers confront casualty reports that cannot be concealed. 2 battleships lost. Veteran crews gone. Destroyers shattered. Air crews depleted beyond recovery. In Noumea, Halsey reads the same figures with grim satisfaction. The cost has been severe, but the strategic calculus has shifted. Japanese naval superiority in the Solomons is broken. The initiative is slipping. On Guadalcanal, exhausted Marines and soldiers feel the change before they see it. Night bombardments grow less frequent. The Tokyo Express runs thinner, riskier. Enemy attacks lose coordination. The attritional wheel grinds on. Japan has committed elite surface forces and failed to dislodge a foothold carved into jungle and coral. Every reinforcement now feeds a campaign that devours strength without decisive gain. Halsey does not celebrate. He knows the war remains vast, the Pacific enormous. But here, in these dark waters, something fundamental has cracked. The Empire has begun to bleed beyond its capacity to heal, and the bull is not finished pressing the January 23rd, 1943, 6:10 hours. Off Rennell Island, south of Guadalcanal. Low clouds hang over a gray Pacific. USS Chicago steams in a weary column, her decks slick with spray, her anti-aircraft crews already at their stations. Radar operators track faint contacts rising from the northwest. Japanese land-based bombers, flying low, bogies inbound. Moments later, twin-engine Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers burst to the cloud deck, torpedoes slung beneath their bellies. Tracers claw upward from American cruisers and destroyers. 5-inch guns bark in disciplined rhythm. A torpedo slams into Chicago's starboard side. Steel buckles. Compartments flood. Damage control teams scramble through scalding steam and ruptured piping. The cruiser lists, but she remains afloat. Tugs attempt to tow her south, away from range of further attack. They do not make it. A second wave arrives the next day. More torpedoes. More concussions. Chicago finally rolls and sinks, stern lifting briefly toward the sky before vanishing into the dark. Even in victory, the cause continues. Yet by early 1943, the strategic direction is unmistakable. Japanese forces on Guadalcanal are starving. Supplies cannot reach them in sufficient quantity. American submarines prowl the approaches. Aircraft from Henderson Field punish every attempt at reinforcement. In Tokyo, the decision is made. Operation Coup. Evacuate Guadalcanal. Under cover of darkness and deception, Japanese destroyers extract thousands of troops in late January and early February. It is a skillful withdrawal, disciplined and precise, but it is a withdrawal nonetheless. On February 9th, 1943, American patrols confirmed the truth. Guadalcanal is secured. For Halsey, there is no grand ceremony, no speech carved into history. There is only the next objective. The Solomon Islands stretch northwest like a chain of stepping stones toward her bow, the great Japanese bastion in New Britain. That fortress bristles with airfields, coastal guns, and warships sheltering within Simpson Harbor. To strike directly would be costly beyond measure. Instead, Halsey embraces a new logic. Bypass, isolate, strangle, Operation Cartwheel begins to take shape in coordination with General Douglas MacArthur advancing along New Guinea's coast. American forces will seize key islands, construct airfields, and progressively cut Rabaul off from reinforcement and resupply. The war becomes a geometry of range and runway length. March 1943. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea. Japanese transports attempt to move reinforcements from Rabaul to La in New Guinea. 8 transports, escorted by destroyers, push south under heavy cloud cover. They believe weather will shield them from air attack. It does not. American B-25 Mitchells and A-20 Havertz attack at masthead height, using skip bombing techniques perfected through bitter experimentation. Bombs ricochet across the water into hulls. P-38 Lightning strafe decks packed with soldiers. Ships burn from bow to stern. Destroyers maneuver desperately, laying smoke, firing anti-aircraft barges. It is not enough. One by one, transports are left dead in the water, exploding under repeated strikes. By March 4th, all 8 transports are sunk. Thousands of Japanese troops drown or are cut down in the water. The loss reverberates through the Imperial Navy. Reinforcement by slow convoy is no longer viable under American air dominance. Halsey's doctrine of relentless pressure is bearing fruit. Summer 1943. New Georgia. American troops slog through mangrove swamps and razor grass under monsoon rain. Japanese defenders fight from bunkers camouflaged within jungle that seems alive and hostile. Naval clashes erupt again in Iron Bottom Sound and beyond. Cruisers trading shells in chaotic night engagements. But each battle now trends toward the same conclusion. American radar improves. Tactics mature. Industrial output surges. New Essex-class carriers commission one after another. Replacement pilots arrive in steady streams. Japan cannot match the pace. In August, Vela Gulf becomes another turning point. American destroyers execute a textbook night torpedo attack, sinking 3 Japanese destroyers without loss. The night fighting advantage once held by the Empire begins to evaporate. Rabaul itself comes under sustained air assault. Carrier raids and land-based bombers crater its runways, sink ships in harbor, and reduce fuel depots to smoking ruin. The fortress remains physically intact, but strategically paralyzed. The Imperial Navy, once confident it could lure the U.S. fleet into a decisive annihilation, now finds itself reacting, retreating, conserving dwindling strength. Halsey watches the maps change color. What began as a desperate defense of the jungle airstrip has evolved into an offensive that slices through the Empire's southern perimeter. Every island seized becomes a dagger pointed deeper into Japanese lines. But the bull understands something essential. The enemy is wounded, not dead. Farther west, in waters still beyond American reach, the combined fleet waits for a moment to strike back, to restore honor with a single overwhelming blow. And when that moment comes, it will not be in a jungle clearing. It will be across an ocean. June 11, 1944. 5:30 hours. Western Pacific. The horizon burns orange as carrier aircraft lift from the decks of Task Force 58. Dozens of Hellcats claw into humid air, followed by Helldivers and Avengers heavy with bombs and torpedoes. Their target lies hundreds of miles west. The Mariana Islands, Saipan, Tinian, Guam. If seized, these islands will place American B-29 superfortresses within direct range of the Japanese home islands. The strategic implications are unmistakable. For the first time, Japan itself will be vulnerable to sustained bombing. Admiral Raymond Spruance commands the Fifth Fleet. Vice Admiral Mark Mitchell directs the carrier's striking force. William Halsey, now leading the Third Fleet, remains poised to assume operational control as the broader Pacific offensive accelerates. The machinery of American naval power has become rotational, relentless. Japanese leadership recognizes a danger. Admiral Somu Toyota activates Operation Ago, committing the combined fleet to a decisive engagement in defense of the Marianas. For fleet carriers, additional light carriers, battleships including Yamato and Musashi, cruisers, destroyers. It is a formidable concentration, though many air groups are filled with hastily trained pilots. June 15th. Saipan landings begin. Amphibious tractors churn toward beaches under covering fire from battleships and cruisers. Naval guns thunder in measured salvos, flattening coastal defenses. Marines surge ashore into machine gun fire and mortar bursts. Casualties mount quickly, but the beachhead holds. Japanese submarines strike first blood at sea. USS Albacore torpedoes the carrier Taiho, flagship of Vice Admiral Ozawa. Vapors from ruptured fuel lines accumulate below decks. A single spark triggers a catastrophic explosion hours later. Taiho, pride of the fleet, sinks beneath a column of smoke visible for miles. Another submarine, USS Kavala, finds Shokaku and sends to the bottom with multiple torpedo hits. 2 major carriers gone before the main engagement even begins. June 19th, the Philippine Sea. Radar screens aboard American carriers light up with inbound contacts. Hundreds of Japanese aircraft launch in successive waves, attempting to overwhelm American defenses before carrier aircraft can strike back. They fly into a wall of steel and coordination. Combat air patrols of F-6F Hellcats intercept at distance, guided by radar vectors from ships below. Anti-aircraft batteries create layered curtains of flak. Pilots who survived Guadalcanal and the Solomons now possess experience their adversaries lack. The sky becomes a graveyard. Wave after wave is shredded before reaching effective attack range. Torpedo planes fall in flames. Dive bombers disintegrate under concentrated fire. Few bombs find targets. Damage to the American fleet is minimal. By afternoon, American pilots begin calling it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. More than 300 Japanese aircraft are destroyed in a single day. Ozawa attempts to regroup, launching scattered strikes, but his air groups are bleeding beyond recovery. On June 20th, Mitchell orders a long-range counterstrike late in the day, knowing recovery after dark will be perilous. American aircraft press westward at the extreme edge of fuel endurance. They find the Japanese fleet. Bombs and torpedoes hammer carriers Hyo, Jinyo, and others. Hyo explodes and sinks after aviation fuel ignites. Additional ships suffer crippling damage. As darkness falls, American aviators struggle to return, many ditching in black water, guided only by flares and searchlights deliberately left burning despite submarine risk. The losses are heavy, but the exchange ratio is decisive. By the end of the battle, Japan has effectively lost a core of its remaining carrier air arm. The combined fleet still possesses hulls, but without trained pilots and aircraft, carriers are hollow instruments. Saipan falls in July after brutal fighting inland, including mass civilian suicides driven by propaganda and despair. Tinian and Guam follow. Construction battalions begin carving airfields from coral and jungle at astonishing speed. Within months, B-29 bombers rise from these runways, bound for Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka. Strategic bombing of the home islands begins in earnest. The Marianas gamble has failed for Japan. For American naval leadership, including Halsey and his peers, the implications are clear. The enemy's capacity to contest sea control in the Central Pacific is shattered. What remains of the Imperial Navy will increasingly serve as bait, a fleet in being, waiting for an opportunity to inflict symbolic damage. But symbols do not stop industrial momentum. American shipyards continue launching Essex-class carriers, Iowa-class battleships, and countless destroyers and submarines. Logistics chains span oceans with mathematical precision. Fuel, ammunition, replacement aircraft, trained crews. The scale is overwhelming. Yet one more confrontation looms. To sever Japan from its southern resources in the Dutch East Indies and secure a path toward the Philippines, the next objective lies across a broad archipelago. Leyte, there, in October 1944, the largest naval battle in history will erupt, and the question of divided command, aggressive instinct, and calculated risk will test American leadership to its limits. The Empire, cornered, will gamble everything, and the outcome will reshape the Pacific forever. October 20th, 1944, 10 o'clock hours. Leyte Gulf, Philippines. Gray hulls crowd the horizon as transports anchor off red and white beaches. Battleships open fire in rolling broadsides, their shells arcing inland toward Japanese fortifications. Amphibious tractors grind through surf under a canopy of smoke. General Douglas MacArthur wades ashore hours later, fulfilling a promise made 2 years earlier. I have returned. For the Imperial Navy, this is a decisive moment long anticipated. Operation Shogo activates. Multiple surface forces will converge on Leyte Gulf from different directions, smash an invasion fleet, and severing American supply lines. It is a complex plan born of desperation. Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita leads the powerful center force to the San Bernardino Strait. His ships include the super battleships Yamato and Musashi, heavy cruisers, and destroyers. Vice Admiral Shoji Nishimura advances from the south through Surigao Strait. Vice Admiral Disaburo Ozawa commands the northern force, a decoy carrier group with minimal aircraft strength. Its purpose is simple: lure the American fast carriers away. Admiral William Halsey commands the Third Fleet, including Task Force 38, the fast carrier striking arm. His mandate is aggressive exploitation of opportunity. He believes the destruction of enemy carriers remains the paramount objective. October 23rd. American submarines Darter and Dace intercept Kurita's center force in the Palawan Passage. Torpedoes slam into heavy cruisers Otago and Maya, sinking them. Takao is crippled and forced to withdraw. Kurita survives, transferred to Yamato. October 24th. The Sibuyan Sea. American carrier aircraft locate the center force and strike repeatedly. Musashi absorbs an extraordinary punishment, hit by multiple bombs and torpedoes throughout the day. Her massive hull lifts progressively. Flooding overwhelms damage control. By evening, she capsizes and sinks, one of the largest warships ever lost. Reports reach Halsey indicating Kurita may be retreating westward. Meanwhile, scout planes detect Ozawa's northern force to the north, carriers visible on the horizon. For Halsey, the sight of enemy carriers is irresistible. He orders the Third Fleet north at high speed, concentrating his battleships and carriers to annihilate Ozawa. The San Bernardino Strait, gateway to Leyte Gulf in the north, is left unguarded. Halsey assumes Kurita's battered force poses no immediate threat. October 25th. Dawn. Kurita has reversed course during the night and transits the San Bernardino Strait unopposed. His battleships and cruisers emerge east of Samar, directly behind the lightly defended American escort carrier groups, providing close air support to the invasion beaches. Task Unit April 3rd, 77, call sign Taffy 3, consists of 6 escort carriers, 3 destroyers, and 4 destroyer escorts. Their mission is anti-submarine patrol and air cover, not fleet engagement. Lookout Site Pagoda, masts on the horizon. Battleships. Yamato opens fire at extreme range. Shells towering like freight trains splash near escort carriers. Heavy cruisers close the distance rapidly. Taffy 3 is outgunned beyond measure. Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague orders smoke-laid and aircraft launched with whatever ordnance remains. Some planes carry depth charges. Others are armed only with machine guns. They attack anyway. Destroyers Johnston, Hull, and Heermann charge toward the Japanese line, firing torpedoes and audacious runs that disrupt formation. Johnston, under Commander Ernest Evans, is pounded relentlessly, but continues fighting until dead in the water. Escort carrier Gamber Bay is caught by cruiser gunfire and sinks. Others weave through smoke and rain squalls, narrowly evading destruction. Pilots make repeated dry runs to distract enemy gunners. Kurita faces unexpected resistance and conflicting reports of American fleet carriers nearby. Believing he may be engaging a larger force and concerned about air attack, he hesitates. Then he withdraws. Against staggering odds, Taffy 3 survives. Leyte's invasion fleet remains intact. Meanwhile, to the south, Surigao Strait becomes the last classic battleship engagement in history. American battleships, including those damaged at Pearl Harbor and since repaired, execute a textbook crossing of the T against Nishimura's force. Radar-guided fire devastates Japanese ships in confined waters. Fuso and Yamashiro are sunk. To the north, Halsey destroys Ozawa's decoy carriers at the battle off Cape Anano. For carriers go down, but their air groups were already shadows of former strength. The Battle of Leyte Gulf concludes as the largest naval engagement ever fought, spanning multiple seas and straits over 4 days. Strategically, Japan has lost the ability to conduct coordinated fleet operations on a meaningful scale. Its remaining surface units will rarely sortie again. Fuel shortages, aircraft scarcity, and trained crew losses have reached critical levels. Yet, controversy lingers. Critics argue Halsey's decision to pursue Ozawa left the invasion dangerously exposed. Supporters counter that aggression shattered the last carrier threat. The debate will endure in naval academies and war colleges for decades, examined through doctrine and hindsight. What is undeniable is this. Leyte marks the effective end of the Imperial Navy as an organized offensive instrument. From this point forward, resistance will increasingly take a darker form. Kamikaze. And as American forces press closer to the home islands, the cost of each mile will rise sharply. The Pacific War has entered its final, most brutal phase. October 25, 1944. Afternoon. Off Leyte. The first organized special attack unit dives through broken cloud cover toward the escort carrier St. Lo. Anti-aircraft fire claws upward, but 1-0 presses through. Trailing smoke. It crashes into the flight deck. Seconds later, bombs detonate in the hangar bay. Flames erupt. St. Lo becomes the first major warship sunk by a deliberate suicide attack. The word spreads quickly. Kamikaze. What began as isolated acts now becomes sanctioned doctrine. Vice Admiral Takejiro Nishi formalizes the Special Attack Corps, arguing that only sacrifice can offset American material superiority. Young pilots volunteer, some driven by patriotism, others by pressure, many by fatalism. Aircraft are stripped of unnecessary equipment, packed with explosives, and launched on one-way missions. November 1944 through early 1945, American fleets off the Philippines and later Okinawa face a new threat profile. Radar pickets extend miles from main formations, tasked with early warning. Destroyers stationed at these outer rings absorb the brunt of incoming attacks. Combat air patrols intercept relentlessly, yet some attackers penetrate. The damage is psychological as much as material. A conventional air raid can be disrupted by fear of survival. A pilot intending to die cannot be deterred by proximity to flak bursts. He adjusts course at the last second, aiming for the most vulnerable point, often the flight deck or bridge. Ships burn. Repair crews labor around the clock. Casualties rise. Yet American production and damage control remain decisive. Carriers struck in one operation reappear months later, patched and reinforced. Escort carriers are replaced. Destroyers are commissioned at astonishing speed. The strategic balance does not shift. January 1945. Lingayen Gulf. As forces prepare to retake Luzon, kamikaze waves strike transports and covering ships. Battleships Mississippi and California are hit but survive. The cost of amphibious operations increases, measured in lives and steel. February 1945. Iwo Jima. This volcanic island, only 8 square miles, sits halfway between the Marianas and Japan. Its airfields threaten B-29 formations and offer emergency landing strips for damaged bombers. Seizing it is deemed essential. Pre-invasion bombardment lasts 3 days. It proves insufficient. When Marines land on February 19th, they encounter a defense in depth engineered by Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kurabayashi. Instead of banzai charges, he orders a network of tunnels, pillboxes, and artillery positions concealed beneath Mount Suribachi and across the island. Progress is measured in yards. Flamethrowers, demolition charges, and close-quarters fighting dominate. Casualties mount rapidly on both sides. On February 23rd, Marines raise the American flag atop Suribachi, captured in an image that will become iconic across the United States. But the battle continues for weeks. Nearly the entire Japanese garrison fights to the death. American forces suffer over 26,000 casualties, including nearly 7,000 killed. Iwo Jima becomes both a tactical asset and a grim forecast of what invasion of the home islands might entail. April 1st, 1945. Okinawa. The largest amphibious assault in the Pacific begins on Easter Sunday. Unlike Iwo Jima, initial landings encounter limited resistance. The main Japanese defense lies inland along the Shuri Line, fortified ridges layered with artillery and interconnected caves. Simultaneously, the most intense kamikaze campaign of the war unfolds. Operation Kikusui unleashes mass suicide waves against the invasion fleet. Hundreds of aircraft attack over successive days. Radar picket destroyers suffer grievously. The carrier Bunker Hill is struck by 2 kamikazes in quick succession, resulting in catastrophic fires and heavy casualties. Yet she survives. On April 7th, the battleship Yamato sails on a one-way mission toward Okinawa with limited fuel, intended to beach herself and serve as a coastal battery. American submarines and aircraft track her progress. Carrier strikes intercept south of Kyushu. Bombs and torpedoes overwhelm the giant battleship. She explodes in a massive detonation visible for miles, symbolizing the final eclipse of traditional naval power. On land, fighting on Okinawa becomes attritional and relentless. Rain turns hills into mud. Civilians are trapped between armies. Japanese forces resist with tenacity, launching night infiltrations and localized counterattacks. American troops advance yard by yard under constant artillery fire. By June, organized resistance collapses. Casualty figures are staggering. Over 12,000 Americans killed. Japanese military deaths exceed 100,000. Civilian losses are immense. Strategic reality sharpens. Even without a formal invasion of the home islands, the cost of approaching Japan has escalated dramatically. Military planners project that Operation Downfall, the proposed invasion of Kyushu and Honshu, could result in hundreds of thousands of Allied casualties and far greater Japanese losses. Meanwhile, B-29 bombers from the Marianas intensify incendiary raids against Japanese cities. On the night of March 9 to 10, 1945, Tokyo endures a firebombing that devastates vast districts, killing tens of thousands in hours. Sea lanes are strangled by submarines. Industry falters. Food shortages spread. Yet surrender does not come. The war has narrowed to a final, terrible question. How can it be ended swiftly before the projected invasion begins? The answer is already taking shape in guarded laboratories and remote deserts far from the Pacific Front. July 16, 1945. Jornada del Muerto Desert, New Mexico. At 5 hours, 29 minutes, and 45 seconds local time, a device code named Trinity detonates atop a steel tower. A blinding flash turns night into day. A fireball rises, expanding into a towering column capped by a roiling cloud. Shockwaves ripple across the desert floor. Scientists of the Manhattan Project watch in stunned silence. The atomic age has begun. The project, directed scientifically by J. Robert Oppenheimer and militarily by General Leslie Groves, has drawn upon vast industrial and intellectual resources. Uranium enrichment at Oak Ridge, plutonium production at Hanford, precision engineering at Los Alamos. The objective is singular: produce a weapon capable of unprecedented destructive force before Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan can do the same. Germany has already surrendered in May. The Pacific War continues. July 26, 1945. The Potsdam Declaration is issued by the United States, the United Kingdom, and China, later endorsed by the Soviet Union. It calls upon Japan to surrender unconditionally or face prompt and utter destruction. The Japanese government debates internally. Some leaders seek mediated peace, preserving the imperial institution. Others argue for continued resistance, hoping to inflict such casualties on an invading force that terms might soften. No formal acceptance is delivered. August 6, 1945. 8:15, Hiroshima. A B-29 bomber named Enola Gay releases a uranium gun-type weapon nicknamed Little Boy over the city. 43 seconds later, it detonates approximately 600 meters above ground. The blast and thermal pulse obliterate structures within a wide radius. Fires ignite simultaneously across urban districts. Shockwaves collapse buildings far beyond the hypocenter. Tens of thousands die instantly. Many more suffer burns and radiation injuries. Medical infrastructure is shattered. Communication lines fail. The scale of destruction confounds comprehension. Japanese authorities struggle to assess what has occurred. Initial reports are fragmentary. By August 7th, American broadcasts announced the use of a new weapon harnessing atomic energy. August 8, 1945. The Soviet Union declares war on Japan, honoring commitments made at Yalta. Red Army forces launch a massive offensive into Manchuria, overwhelming the Guangdong army with speed and mechanized force. Strategic assumptions in Tokyo collapse further. August 9, 1945, 11:02, Nagasaki. A second B-29 Boxcar drops a plutonium implosion device called Fat Man after primary targeting complications. The bomb detonates over the Urakami Valley. Topography limits some blast effects, yet devastation remains profound. Industrial facilities and residential areas are destroyed. Casualties mount rapidly. Within the Japanese Supreme Council, debate intensifies. Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo urges acceptance of the Potsdam terms with preservation of the emperor. War Minister Korechika Anami argues that national honor demands continued struggle. The Emperor Hirohito, typically distant from direct policy decisions, intervenes. He favors surrender. August 15, 1945. Emperor Hirohito addresses the nation by radio in a recorded message. The first time his voice is heard publicly, he speaks of enduring the unendurable and bearing the unbearable. He cites a new and most cruel bomb as a reason to accept the terms. Across the Pacific, Allied forces react with relief and disbelief. Celebrations erupt in cities from Manila to San Francisco. Yet even amid jubilation, the human cost lingers heavily. September 2, 1945. Tokyo Bay. Aboard the battleship Missouri, representatives of the Japanese government signed the instrument of surrender before Allied officials, including General Douglas MacArthur and Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz. The ceremony is brief, formal, definitive. World War II has ended. The Pacific Theater alone has consumed millions of lives, military and civilian. Entire cities lie in ruins. Navies have been shattered and rebuilt. Technologies once theoretical have altered the trajectory of warfare and geopolitics permanently. The atomic bombings will remain subject to enduring ethical and strategic debate. Proponents argue they forestalled an invasion that could have cost far more lives. Critics contend alternatives might have compelled surrender without nuclear devastation. Historians will examine intercepted communications, casualty projections, diplomatic signals, and moral frameworks for generations. What is beyond dispute is this: the war transformed global power structures. The United States emerges with unmatched industrial capacity and a nuclear monopoly, soon to be challenged. The Soviet Union extends influence across Eastern Europe and into East Asia. Colonial systems begin to fracture under pressures accelerated by wartime upheaval. In Japan, occupation reforms dismantle militarist institutions, draft a new constitution, and reshape society. Reconstruction begins amid scarcity and uncertainty. For veterans who fought from Pearl Harbor to Okinawa, the end is both culmination and rupture. They return home carrying memories of coral beaches, carrier decks, jungle ridges, and burning seas. Some speak freely. Others remain silent. The Pacific War began with surprise and expansion, surged through carrier duels and island campaigns, and concluded with weapons that redefined the boundaries of destruction. Its lessons continue to shape strategy, deterrence, and diplomacy. The threshold crossed in July 1945 cannot be uncrossed. Humanity now lives in the shadow of forces it once sought merely to unleash for victory. The war is over.